My name is Susan Gott, and this is Phoenix Glass Studio in Tampa. Some of the themes have a Native American feel. I'm interested in spirituality, the Buddha, the healing chakras, and the centers of the body, mythology and ancient civilizations, as well as my travels around the United States, down to Mexico, and I've traveled into Europe. They are all overlapping themes and symbols that repeat themselves in different ways in different pieces. The glass pieces themselves, I use a combination of Italian techniques, glass blowing techniques. Marini is one of them. There's spirals. I use copper inclusions and hand-formed copper. All of those things add different layers of elements and interest to the piece to make it more sculptural. There's a lot of planning in the placement of pieces. The areas that will be ground and polished are all planned in advance because we have to think about that from the design element from the very beginning. What's going to be positive? What's going to be negative? What's going to be textured? What's going to be smooth and polished? The technologies that we're using today in the hot glass studio have only been with us for the last 40 or 50 years. For artists to use glass as a material, it's only because of these smaller furnaces and annealers and computers and controllers that have come together to allow someone like myself to create these kind of works in a smaller private studio. We have this very large sand mold. The sand mold is only used one time. Each mold is hand-carved, hand-colored. I go in and weave some of the copper into the mold. Each one is unique. Even though I'm using a mold-making process, it's not a repetitive mold. The mold cannot be used again. But during the casting process itself, we are scooping the glass out of the furnace at 2300 degrees. And we're working that molten material anywhere from 2000 to 2300 all the time. Whether we're blowing or casting, we're right in that range. Because it is so intense and you're working with such hot temperatures, not only does the team of employees and staff that I have to be present, they have to be omnipresent. They have to be so hyper aware because you're dealing with torches, 2300 degree molten glass, 900 degree annealers. Everybody has got to be sharp and focused. The public art that I'm doing really comes from years of experience doing commission work. The Zack Street project, the title of the piece is Vignettes of Tampa, and it's on the Zack Street Promenade of the Arts. It's a series of cast glass panels that are incorporated into a trellis. Each one represents a different aspect of Tampa. Some are historical, some are more contemporary. We went around Tampa and found objects and artifacts that somehow represented Tampa and that could be cast into glass. For instance, I went to the Tampa Theater and I found the tragedy mask. So they allowed me to go in and make a rubber mold of the actual tragedy mask. From the rubber mold, I made a plaster positive. From that plaster positive, we pressed it into the sand, pulled it out. I have a negative impression of the tragedy mask, and then we cast it in glass. It's very gratifying to get the public art commissions because I do realize that those pieces are going to be there for years and possibly even generations to come. I've used bird imagery for many, many years, and that has lots of layers of ancient symbolism from the chevron to goddess imagery. So So the Spirit Hawk has the copper wings, and it has Marini, which are the spirals down the chest. It has some V's that represent the chevron triple V's, which is a symbol of life, death, and rebirth. The inspiration for the catbirds originates really from my interest in Egyptian mythology and the mummification process, where they would actually mummify their cats. The catbird is a relative of the mockingbird, but it's also, with a little twist of Southern humor, a woman that's in a position of power. If you say that you're in the catbird seat, that means you're like on the top of the heap. You're the one. Thus, it's a female form. It's a cat. It's a bird. Yeah, she's just kind of a fun, interesting sculpture. Passageways is one of those pieces that's evolving and inspired by earlier pieces. Well, the passageway is a doorway. It's a doorway to another world. It's a point of communication with the spirit side. As an artist, one of the most important things is to be able to come up with a new design and come up with a new idea and make that new piece. Whether it's always successful or not, it doesn't really matter. You have to go through that process of experimentation and exploration to be able to come to that new aha moment. That's perhaps the biggest challenge of it all. People that have owned my work will tell me years later that they're always seeing something new in it. It might be the way the light goes through it in one day, or the morning sun catches it in a certain way, but they always see something new into it. So I think that's important, that the piece doesn't grow old, it has a life of its own.